you became more afraid because you realized how random and deadly it was. And all this facade that you have, all the psychological barriers that you have in your head that are saying it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me. They're all subconscious. You don't even realize it's happening. Those start to go away. And so obviously mission success is your primary focus, right? Like we represent the United States on the battlefield and the objectives of the United States government, the United States people. That's our job, is to represent them on the battlefield. So they would always say that the American, this was sort of a phrase that would kind of get thrown around sometime in the SEAL teams, and it was like, the American taxpayers deserve to have the best warriors representing them. So you better show up and do your job. And you better, like we represent, the U.S. citizens. But so there's that level of it. The other level of it too, on a practical level, on a pragmatic level, just day to day, I'm trying to survive today. So it's like, I might die in training if you mess up. I have a buddy. He got shot in training by a guy who was going, I forget if he had already completed, no, he was going through SEAL training. So he was almost completed with SEAL training. One of the students shot one of the instructors on accident with a machine gun. Yeah, so my buddy got shot, with a 7.62 round from a machine gun.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
through his shoulder, luckily he survived and all that kind of stuff, right? So you're dealing with, life and death situations.
Yes.
And so it's like, even before we get to the battlefield, like I just want to survive and at least get to that point. That's where we can at least, if I'm going to die, let's die in battle. Taking out some bad guys who want to harm the Western world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you had said when I asked you earlier about your whole, when you first got introduced in Navy SEALs and whatever, you went through the story of how, you're like, oh, they look the most scary, I'll do that. But, you're still a kid at that point. You were obviously extremely mature, that needs to be said, but you still don't have a concept of life and death. And you said it yourself a few minutes ago, you didn't know at this point how you might react when you get put into that war situation in Afghanistan. But was there a point, I don't know if it was before Buds, it sounds like maybe it would have been after Buds based on what you're saying, but was there a point where, you haven't deployed yet, but you are now realizing, okay, I'm representing, as you said, the American taxpayers, but I'm going to go into a situation that I may not survive? Like, was there a real understanding of that, or was it more you're so focused on your training and going through the motions of it that's like, we'll deal with that when we get there?
Well, a little bit. So when I was going through training, I had a situation where like my parachute didn't open. My first parachute didn't open. That was my 11th jump. So this was still during SEAL training. So I had this near-death experience where I had to cut away my parachute and then open up my second parachute, right? And that was like this terrifying, adrenaline-inducing thing, like hands physically shaking.
Oh, that's my
I'd never
nightmare.
experienced that before. Yeah, and I literally had recurring nightmares for a while after that. But my brain sort of figured it out. That's like kind of an interesting story as well. So there was that level of it a little bit, but there's this thing that I think people don't fundamentally understand when it comes to combat. There is a certain level of denial that everybody who has not been in combat has about combat, right? So there's like this level of denial, and it's like, okay, when we get into combat, like I really hope my buddy doesn't get hurt. That would suck. You're not even, most guys are not even thinking that it's going to happen to them. Like there's this psychological level of denial until you've actually been there and you've seen it. And so you hear guys in Vietnam would talk about this, like the longer you spent in Vietnam, the more afraid you got. You didn't get more confident. You didn't get more like, oh, I got this. You became more afraid because you realized how random and deadly it was. And all this facade that you have, all the psychological barriers that you have in your head that are saying it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to me. They're all subconscious. You don't even realize it's happening. Those start to go away. And so your first time in combat, okay, somebody's actually shooting at me for the first time. Oh, shoot. Oh my goodness. Okay, somebody's shooting at me, not just at my group. Somebody is physically shooting at me. I hear the bullets snapping, feet around me, going between my legs, right? Like there's bullets landing right around here. That's my first time in combat. I was like, oh, somebody's physically trying to kill me. So that facade breaks down a little bit. And then you see the guy next to you bleeding because he got hit by something. And you're like, oh, okay, this can hit you. And then over time, eventually you see people get shot and you see the dead bodies, you see all this kind of stuff. And then eventually all of these sort of mental blocks and barriers that you have just get torn down. And then for me, when I finally did get shot, that was all of those sort of coping mechanisms and denial were gone. The moment like I got hit, I was like, all right, like for the rest of my life, I no longer feel like I'm not going to be the one who's going to get hit in the car accident. I no longer feel like I'm going to be the one who's going to make it safely through this roller coaster ride and it's not going to go wrong. All of that illusion of safety is like completely gone because you're like, dude, I was like, I'm inches away from death. And so it breaks down over time. But then that level of seriousness is why you have the more senior guys. They're a little bit more hard-nosed. Some guys will be more hard-nosed. Some guys can be more focused on mentorship, and they take things a lot more serious because they're no longer in denial. When you first show up to your SEAL team, you're like, yeah, dude, I'm a SEAL. This is great. We're gonna go kick some ass. It's like, yeah, dude, you also might get your legs blown off. You might become paralyzed. Your face might get burned off. You might die. You might be blinded. That's if you survive. And that's the reality of it. Yeah.
It's heavy, man.
Yeah.
And that I've never heard someone describe it that way psychologically about that switch. And it's like, it's gone forever. Like you now realize this is always it. And now you're the opposite, like in your normal life as you're describing it too. Cause you're like, oh, all this could happen to me. Like forget a war zone. It's just like, oh, I could be the guy in that car accident. That's it's what you say though, like even as a civilian, it's funny how you describe that because I'm always checking myself on things like that. Like I'll be out there, I'll be like, wow, it's really a shame that happened to that person. And then I will make myself say to myself like, yo, that could have been me walking right there. Yeah. Because it's not your first, it's this natural small narcissism that's built into all of us. Like, oh, we won't be the one. It's just human nature. But then you get it totally flipped on its head because you go into war zones and you're like, oh, no, that can happen.
Speaking of Stephen Ambrose, who wrote Band of Brothers, he wrote a book called D-Day. I don't know if you've read that one. It's like, I think it's like 1,000 pages long, but it just goes into detail of everything that happened, like leading up to D-Day and their planning and all that stuff on it. From what I understand, I believe the entire first wave of troops, except for some of the Rangers, I believe the vast majority of the first wave of troops that hit the beaches at Normandy were all first-time fresh troops who had never been in combat before. And they did that intentionally because guys who've been in combat before, they're going to be much more likely to hide behind cover. They're not going to charge the machine gun nest as readily because they're not in denial of the fact that you're going to get shot. They've already been in combat in North Africa or Italy or wherever else. So that's another reason why they did that.
Yeah, that's come up on a few podcasts recently, like D-Day, because we had the 80th anniversary over this past year. It blows my mind, the sacrifice that was made there of people who literally, they put down the opening of the boat, they're gone. Like you could have 40 guys, thing down, 2 seconds later, 40 guys gone.
Totally gone. Yeah. And we as Americans, we don't fully understand that level of of violence and whatnot. And for good reason. That's good. That means that the military is doing their job. It can't happen, obviously, 9/11, here close to New York. Things like that can't happen, but it's difficult for people to fathom. It's like, oh, that couldn't happen. That couldn't happen here. And wars really aren't fought that way nowadays. It's usually if there's a mass casualty like that, it's usually going to be a helicopter was shot down or a plane crashed or something like that, at least for the American military. Yeah.
Does it frustrate you sometimes now when you're here in America and you see, let's just call it what it is, some of the bullshit we fight over, and perhaps in that fighting, the things we take for granted, does it frustrate you to the point that you almost wish the rest of us could have to see the types of things you've seen to understand how good we have it here? Well,
I'd say yes and no. Yes, I'm frustrated. No, I don't necessarily want people to have to experience these things. But
that was harsh.
But yes, it is very frustrating. I think there's a lot of people intentionally blinding themselves to reality, and there's a bunch of different reasons for that and whatnot. But I think that as a society, this is why Memorial Day is important. This is why what a society focuses on during its holidays are important. You don't have to have another terrorist attack on U.S. soil to remember 9/11. You don't have to have, you don't have to have Americans getting shot in the streets to actually fully take the time to think about what's going on Memorial Day, the men who've died, the men and women who've died. And I think it says a lot about our society that, in a negative way, that we have these like little dates here. There's like, okay, Memorial Day, like weekend, like, okay, cool, I can get, mattresses for cheap. That's what people think when they think Memorial, like, oh, Memorial Day sale, right? Or, July 4th, it's like, oh, cool, fireworks and grilling out. And it's like, no, there's a deep story there. There's a deep history there. And I feel like a lot of times we step away from that. Or if we look at like Easter, like, hey, what does that symbol? It's like that symbolizes Christ rising from the dead to save all of humanity, right? And that's what it represents. It represents sacrifice. It represents this horrible thing, and then God's mercy and love and that stuff, right? But what does that turn into? It turns into bunnies that lay eggs, apparently,
Right.
and that kind of thing. So those holidays are there to remind us of these important things. And so I think it's important just for Americans to, like, okay, on that holiday, on Memorial Day, hey, have a great weekend, enjoy your 3-day weekend, but like take 5 minutes to like drive by the military cemetery. Just remember, if you're a parent, take 5 minutes. Just tell your kids, like, hey, this is why we have off work today. It's for us to remember these people who've died to keep us all safe, because there's bad guys over there. They want to come here and hurt us, and those people went and stopped them.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I do every day to start my day after I get a workout in, I'll take a lot of calls in the morning, and I'll go for a walk when I'm doing it right out here on the river. And it's beautiful because, like, you got the whole New York skyline. It's the best view in New York that exists anywhere. And along the route I go every day, when I cut back into town to come back down here, I'm not going to lie and act like I stop every day, but every now and then I'll stop at this memorial that's like literally overlooking this skyline, much of which was built after World War II, right? Of all the World War II veterans who made that possible. And there's just something in that where it's not long. It's not like, this deep, profound thing, but I'm like, damn, like they did that. They did that right behind there. Like we have that because of them. And I wish, it's not to get preachy, but I wish more people from a civilian standpoint like me would do that. I don't really ever see people, I'm sure some people do, but I don't ever really see people stop by that thing or really look at it. It's a pretty amazing memorial too. But thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.